Hi, every, oh, hi everyone. This is Daisy here, aka Professional High Priestess. And I wanted to just put this channeled message out there because I feel like a lot of individuals can resonate with this message right now. Thank you so much, Vivi. A while ago, um, I'm doing this because I feel like there's a lot going on. Um, I want to give you guys a different perspective in terms of like the level of healing that needs to occur with some of these masculine individuals that you're dealing with, so that you can be ready and make a proper decision. Because now you got all the facts. Right? A while ago on Patreon, I put up a whole lesson, a whole lesson on the difference between Jesus and Isis and Jesus. I know my voice. So yeah, I'm losing my voice a little bit. No, I'm not losing my voice, but one of these karmics is playing games with me and my man. Anyways, yeah. So there's that. I can't even bother. Let me get back to what I was talking about. This a while ago on Patreon, I put up a message about what's the difference between Jesus, and then Jesus, right? Well, I don't know what he thinks he's doing, but Jesus, aka Yahshua, the real name is Yahshua, is the fourth Pope son, Cesar Borgia. So that white man with blonde hair, blue eyes, that's Cesar Borgia, who was a murderer, rapist. He was very violent. If you listen to 48 Laws of Power, there was even a part where they were talking about Queen Isabel, how they had to tiptoe around him in his temper because he was psychotic and was a religious fanatic in the sense that he thought that he was a god. So what happened was Constantine, remember the image, they didn't have an image for who the prophet was for a while. The only reason why there's an image for who the prophet is in Christianity is because Islam was gaining a lot of followers at that time. Then they instituted the Crusades and things like that. So they were trying to compete with following because following is how they powered up their rituals and their spells and the magic that they were doing, etc. Right? Because there was no division between church and state, the religion and the government. So the more people they had following them, their false religion, the more power they had in their government, things like that, in their military, all of that. So the image that you see, that's not who Yahshua, the real prophet, is. Some people call him by different names. I'm just going to say Yahshua, okay, for purposes of what we're going to be talking about today. If you feel like you're a fucking better scholar to go break all, because I got Hebrew Israelites on my channel that be coming with their bullshit and commands and all that stuff too, then you go on your channel, you break that down. Constantine, the emperor of Rome, after destroying the Sibyls, which we've been talking about, which were prophetesses across Libya, Morocco, and Europe, black women who were these military men and rulers and kings and shit like that would come to for support and guidance and insight because they had vision, they had the oracle, all that stuff. That's why they worship the Black Madonna, right? So she's a Sibyl. Now, she was considered like a form of the Sibyls, right? Mami Wata, which is like the primordial mother, that the all-knowing high priestess, Isis. Okay, so Constantine, after destroying all them, they're like, okay, well, we need to advance our works. They took a lot of the Sibyls' information and things like that about godheads and goddesses and bastardized it. They collected all the Druidic people. And what they did, okay, they gathered up all the Druidic people and the priests and things like that, and they sacrificed them and was like, "We want the power and knowledge and information that you have, etc., etc." Because a lot of the English language, Roman language, all these different languages, they all come from the same Greco-Roman German roots. So when they were doing their conquest and building languages and exploring, creating cultures and stuff like that, they found the Druidic people. They liked what they had, which is the German Satanic Bible and other forms of witchery and magic and things like that. Um, and they took them into their camp, but and they conquered them and took them into their camp. But this is the thing though about the Druidic people. A lot of the Druidic people though were also of a God. They still worship the goddess, even though they have been bastardized in some ways. They still were consecrated to like what they call to be Hellenized, which is to be influenced by the goddess culture, right? That's why they fought the Trojan Wars. We talked about this in One Divine Feminine Channeling. So Constantine and them were like, okay, we're going to take their culture and embed it into Christianity, sun worship. Because remember, the real Sabbath day is on Saturday. But in order to align with the worship of the sun god, masculine force, instead of the moon energy, which is the feminine force, but they're still feminine even in the sun segment energy. We'll talk about that, which is the warrior aspect of the feminine. We're gonna change it to Sunday to align, right? So Constantine and them, they took on from the Druidic people, Isus. Isus. That's where they get the name Jesus. Isus. And in order to make sacrifices and offering to Isus, you need to hang people from trees, right? So this is why I put the trigger warning. And this is going to be specific probably to like, the population of black and brown folks that are listening to this, okay? Or some of you guys may have old ancestry connected to the Druidic people, and your ancestors were involved in those sacrifices to Isis. But those sacrifices to Isis, some of your masculines that you're dealing with, their ancestors came from the South. They dealt with Jim Crow, they dealt with slavery, they dealt with all that. That genetic memory is still lingering. That's why you see the things that are happening amongst the population today with some of the violence and just the lack of enlightenment and the emotional trauma and things like that. A lot of your masculines and some feminines too. We have our consecrations too with Moloch and shit like that, doing child sacrifices and etc. Most of that's the karmics though. Some of us as feminines, we have our blood that was tied to sacrifices in past lives, just like a lot of these masculines. But the thing about feminine, we kind of have an advantage because we're the deepest, we're the strongest connection to the spiritual realm because we have a womb and we give birth. We have embedded within us higher level mechanisms for clearing out energy. That's why we have a period, right? So a lot of these masculines, their ancestors come from those legacies, but the sacrifice to Isis is still in their blood today. That's why they get tied with certain karmics and certain bloodlines in this lifetime. Yeah, it goes deeper than deep. All of that shit is sacrifice. Because even with the KKK, the masks and shit like that they wear, they have something exactly similar in Italy, but it's just purple and red. But it's not like racist. If you see what it's of the church, they wear these caps and hats, and it looks like the KKK. They're doing sacrifices, rituals, the whole shit, right? But no racist connotation there. So when they're doing all these different sacrifices and taking men, women, children, and fires and all that stuff, they're consecrating them to certain entities and deities of a low vibrational nature. It's the same thing like in these day and ages where these karmics, they play with these pregnancy traps, they play with the reproduction, and then they go to Planned Parenthood or some shit like that. That's Moloch. Or even if the child comes into full fruition, it's consecrated to Lilith or some other dark force because of the way that it was created. So for a lot of you guys, this is where a lot of the soul retrieval and healing has to happen for a lot of these masculines. It has to go that deep. There's other instances too that are in existence. The transatlantic slave trade with the water, the Spanish conquistadors. Some of your masculines, their ancestors were a part of were a part of that. Sailing to the old world. Think about just in Dominican Republic, just some 40, 50 years ago. I can't remember this dude's name. He was a very crazy dictator and like just would slaughter people like crazy as fuck. I can't remember his name, but he was actually trained by the United States. There's a documentary called School of the Americas. So this is like, even think about like the Berbers in the Middle East having to move from place to place to place, nomadic people. Trujillo, thank you. Thank you, Trujillo, Trujillo. Oh my God. Bruh, that shit was crazy. Yeah. Latin America, think about like MS-13 in El Salvador, Honduras, Brazil, we're still recovering from these political factions, principalities that impacted us on this level. Your masculines have bloodlines that were directly impacted on the negative end or were directly involved in terms of facilitating. Thank you so much, Kelsey. Wow. Yeah. Trio. Crazy as fuck. When I say that's when you start to really understand why Dominican people are like that. This is what I'm talking about in terms of the understanding history. You have to. Your families from Central America, you guys need to watch his documentary. It's called School of the Americas, and it talks about how America, they train these different dictators like Osama bin Laden and all of them to then go rule these countries and create havoc and chaos. Watching that gives you the historical context in terms of why your masculine or feminine acts the way that they do is because of the genetic trauma from the political context that created the societal factors. Because all these different leaders were doing sacrifices for the Time Lords to become a Time Lord or something like that. So some of your masculines, like I said, in past lives or their ancestors were impacted, sacrificed, things like that. And that genetic memory is still in them. That's why they do some of the things that they do. But if you think about a man hanging from the tree, that's like the hanged man, right? And they said, curse is a man that in the Bible or some stuff like that. But the funny thing about that, I started thinking about that. If you think about the hanged man, and there's a passage in the Bible that talks about that because I study astrotheology, so it lines exactly up with tarot. When you study this astrology throughout the Bible and different spiritual, religious texts, and then how they line up with the tarot as well. Just like we're talking about the Hierophant versus the Antichrist, right? The funny thing is, though, the hangman is also someone who lacks enlightenment and awareness. These different rituals and sacrifices that some of these masculines got into, they didn't they didn't put themselves into it. Some masculine, their family members, they were a part of dark shit, and that's why they're dealing with stuff now. It's like three levels. They were either a part of the bullshit, were oppressed, and then got involved in some type of practice or something to get out of oppression or have power, or were completely oh, my energy brings birdies to the window, yay, or were completely oppressed and impacted, right, by the principalities. Now, when I was talking about a man hanging from the tree, da 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 da, think about in the hangman. When the hangman is also about lacking of enlightenment, stuck, lacking spiritual growth or development, inability to see from a different perspective. A lot of these rituals that were done on these masculines, these sacrifices and things like that, because of these principalities, it's the whole purpose was to deaden them spiritually for several generations. Like in Brazil, then the Brazil tarot, the Orishas Afro-Brazilian tarot. There's, I think, what card is this? I think it's the Ten of Swords, and they have a sword in the ground. In Brazil, they say that if you go into the forest and you put a sword in the ground, you to curse somebody. The only way that that curse can be broken is the sword has to be eroded. It has to turn into dust. So think about like that type of shit still going on. That energy still lingering in a lot of the bloodlines of a lot of these masculines. And then more is being added to them because it's in their blood and their DNA, they're getting aligned with the principalities, with the karmics in this lifetime to just further their energy. I'm trying to break down something very high level as well as kind of insidious in a way that makes sense for everybody across the spectrum. So I hope you understand. This is a major key right here. This is why for some of these masculines, when they start to get with these karmics, especially with the blood magic, oh, it's game over. It's game over completely. Because they're already vibrating at such a low level with the different sacrifices and things like that that they went through that tampered with their bloodline and their DNA. The karmic is just like, oh, perfect. That's how they get aligned with the karmic in the first place. This is where the soul retrieval, this is why a lot of these masculines are going to be going through tower after tower after tower to try to rearrange their energy fields to give them that opportunity to advance their DNA. and have a spiritual awakening. I was gonna say something. You too, divine feminine, Moloch, or dealing with Lilith or and her consort that work through some of these other low vibrational goddesses and deities that are some of our ancestors got ended up getting wrapped up with or tied to through marriages and stuff like that. We got to clean up too. But then remember, we're already at an advantage because we have the womb. So we have a process where we can literally every month shed layers and layers and layers of ancestral trauma and karma. That's why with these karmas, when I say turn your pussy on, that's what I'm talking about. That's why when I'm saying you guys talk about this wet ass pussy bitch for fucking what? Use that shit to cleanse. I'm not hating on anybody's music or work, but I'm just saying because y'all put too much energy and time into that and not the other stuff. That's why it's like it needs to stop. You know what song I just heard? I suffered through the years. It's just so many tears. Tupac. Yeah. A lot of these masculines too, they're hurting because they're still carrying that ancestral trauma, especially the water ones. Waters the water ones, the ones that have water in their chart, specifically a lot of Pisces too. I'm not saying that's the only distinctive factor, but that is a factor. That's why some of these masculines too, they're put in that position with that water to be able to transmute the energy. That's their saving grace. Because remember, water is a conduit for spirits. So as those low vibrational spirits of the Isis or Moloch that's tied to their blood and their DNA is on them in this lifetime by going through certain emotional experiences, they get to clean and cleanse that out. Because remember, water is the feminine element too. Water, the primordial waters. By going and being with Mami Wata and all those different goddesses and things like that, that's how some of these masculines can earn their bloodline back. That's why these karmics take these masculines to the dark road with Lilith and sex and shit like that. They're taking them to the dark goddesses. So these masculines can work for the dark goddesses, destroying other feminines. Where a lot of these masculines, they're going to realize the game. They're going to be switching teams and aligning themselves with the higher vibrational goddesses and doing the work to honor her. Yeah. That's why you get some of these masculines, they deal with the karmic, they turn into a dog, sleeping with hundreds upon dozens of women, spreading the spiritual entity. Boom, whole principality created. You see, there's one likes, as I said that. Tomorrow's going to be a very major day, a very major day. I don't know why I feel that. So, ooh, Pisces, Saturn. Oh, yeah. That's why a lot of these masculines sometimes too, they're very emotionally like childish, immature, because they can't handle all that energy that's coming up for them to be able to transmute and heal. So it short circuits into sex addiction or something else. This is some very powerful information that I'm giving you guys right now. You guys can each build on this in each of your own way, depending on what type of principality or historical factor that you're dealing with. Like for me, I'm dealing with the impact of slavery, as well as let me say this about the Hebrew Israelites, because there's some of them that they know what they're talking about and they're on point, but there's some of them that they just take that shit and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I do consider myself someone who does is a descendant of the 12 tribes of Judah, for the simple fact that in Nigeria there is a whole entire Jewish federation in Igbo land. They're called the Last Tribe, Lost Tribe. There was a whole episode of them on CNN. And I've always been attracted to Egypt and Kabbalah and things like that, and astrology and things like that. So then you're dealing with that because the real Hebrew Israelite people, they've been oppressed way before the Holocaust, way before the Holocaust. The Holocaust was Jewish people, not Hebrew Israelites, though. That's the thing. But the attack and the assault has been going on. So dealing with that, some of you guys are dealing with Trujillo. Some of you guys are dealing with Middle Passage. Some of you guys are dealing with Ardavasi, Dravidian people being forced off their land or forced into having the caste system flip reversed, where the darker skinned people were the custodians of the spiritual world because of the melanin and the spiritual knowledge that they had. Then they were flipped to the bottom, descended to nothing, disrespected and treated like trash, right? Or maybe the Aboriginal peoples in New Guinea or New Zealand forced off their land, or the indigenous people in Australia as well. Because you guys do know that Australia, it's not just, oh, why is there a whole bunch of like British people here? Australia, the majority of Australians, their ancestors are prisoners, murderers, thieves, criminals. Back in the ancient day in Europe, in Britain, they ran out of room in the prison. So they will put a whole bunch of white folks on a boat. Okay, you're going to go to Australia to be an indentured servant to weigh out your prison, your term. That's why Australia is like that. Not because they are original. Australia used to be completely black. Black indigenous people with blonde hair, or the other Aborigines or indigenous peoples. I love you too, guys. Melissa. Some of you guys, your ancestors, your masculine ancestors were a part of the Great Depression. You know, think about smack dab in the middle of Oklahoma. You're supposed to be farming. You're taking out loans from sharks and stuff like that to try to grow crops and stuff like that to feed. There's a great famine. The land won't produce. Think about the grapes of wrath. You know, some of you guys think about Chicago, or the Great Migration from the south up into the north. Or think about like the Bracero program, where Latin, Hispanic people would try to cross every day into the United States to try to find work on land that was originally theirs, though. His indigenous people were trying to come into these states to find work and stuff like that in a land that was originally theirs, though. You know, think about all of those different things and how they influence like the historical trauma in your masculine's behavior, because there's sacrifice and all of that. There's bloodshed, tears, and everything in all of that. And that's why their behavior is like the way that it is today. So until that level of healing can take place, until they're ready for that level of healing, then it's like, what can you really do? Then on top of that, there's trauma in the land that we're currently walking on. Do you know how hard it is to be a healed person? That's why with some of the karmics, I can't blame them, because there's so many things that you have to like. I wouldn't say so many things. As long as you keep yourself in a high vibration, these other things don't get to you. Once your vibration starts to lower, then they can all sink in. Ships don't sink from the inside out. Holes are created and then the liquid comes in and sinks it, right? That's why I can't blame them, because you have to think about your ancestral trauma. Then you have to think about the trauma that's still in the land. You have to think about the current principalities working themselves through the government, things like that. Then you have to think about your immediate family, the karmics that you're dealing with. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, divine feminine. I have a channeling coming out for us. I think I'm going to take a break for a couple of days to get my throat back together. But we're going to go deeper and deeper into this, specifically for divine feminines, okay? I may actually have to just post. I may Yeah, it's a lot of pain. Like, that's why I heard the Tupac song. I suffered through the years. It's just so many tears. Yeah, a lot of these masculines are holding the pain of their former male ancestors, and they're feeling it all right now. That's what this Capricorn, Saturn and Capricorn was about for a lot of these masculines, reaping the karma of, or the dharma or the pain of their masculine ancestors that came before them. And for the divine feminines, it was understanding our connection to the masculine energies, the patriarchal energy, and how it has impacted us throughout several lifetimes, or and this one, and our own relationship with the masculine energy inside. It's so much, you guys. I'm picking up on a lot of people's energy in the chat. That's why a lot of masculines have generational disenfranchisement of chakras. That's why I made this the ancestral healing deck that has the chakras in it too, so they can see which chakras are being most impacted. Well, I'm gonna do more readings with this deck because I keep it specifically for Patreon because we get deep, but I may do something for the masculine, specifically for ancestry though. If I'm doing anything specific for masculines, it's the highest level possible because I can't. I'm not gonna be talking to them about their karmics. I'm not gonna be talking to them about mm, straight ancestry. Okay, guys. I'm sending you all so much love. I hope this made sense. I hope that helped. Lack of enlightenment is a curse. The inability to have a change of perspective is a curse. Ego is a curse. A lot of these masculines are cursed right now because they're hanging. They're hung from the tree. They're in the hangman position. Hey, the hangman is what? Neptune, Pisces, Pisces. Wasn't Yeshua Pisces? Isn't it Kanye West that calls himself the other Jesus? Isn't he a Pisces moon? There's so much to be learned. So much to be learned. So many synchronicities. All right, you guys. Thank you so much. Bye.